Okay. So you were asking a question about metta, and you did some explanation. So let's go through that again.
Yeah, my question was about if you close your eyes and meditate, then there are many remnants of what you've been experiencing during the day or even years before. In other words, there are many concepts in the mind. And if you practice metta, let's say towards your sister's dog, this also then is a concept because they are not actually in the room and so not part of reality, what is going right on right now. And my question is, if you practice metta like this, let's say towards your sister's dog, is it thereby a pretending of metta because it is not part of reality? And the Buddha says one should practice metta towards all four quarters, above is below. And so, how do you practice real metta instead of metta towards concepts or pretending it? This is basically the question.
Okay. Actually, you've opened a very, very wide door. That this is not a yes or no or easy point, but rather it gets at the very heart of one's practice. And so we'll put the practice back into that context. Now, the first thing that you mentioned is that uh, there are thoughts of the past that are arising. This is something of a skill to know that, because most people in the beginning, before they do anything, they're not really keeping track of what the mind is doing. So even though this stuff is pointed out to them and pointed to as hindrances, it's only after an individual begins to observe this stuff and puts it together to recognize that, hey, look at what the mind is doing. It keeps going into the past. And basically, it delves around in the past looking for something to do. And we pull out a plum and say, I've got something to do now. It's almost like that we have programmed ourselves to be a problem solving machine, and that defines us as a problem solving machine. And when we don't have any problems to solve, we've got no purpose now. And so the new problem is that we've got no problem. And so we have to go find the problem. And that's the solution to that problem. So now that we've got a problem, now we have something to do and we can solve that problem. And we get in the habit of doing that and letting the mind roll on, looking for that. In fact, when someone is doing a lot, we call it worry. But the Buddha calls it, when we're doing it just a little bit, we call that a restless mind. The mind is restless
Mm,
because it's out looking for something.
okay.
So um, this this mind, then, that's restless and even to the point of being worried, also part of that has to do with doubt. And at the most basic level, that doubt is if I'm a failure, then I am worthless and I die. In other
Mm,
words, the self preservation instinct is built into the failure and winning mentality. And so we begin to get worried, and then we feel bad. Are we up to the task? And
mm.
so now we begin to hear that we're actually piling on these hindrances. And then we get the idea, oh, if I had a big golden blah blah to solve all of my problems. Now we get into the greed for having a big golden blah blah. And then we begin to think of only a golden blah blah will do, and I start hating silver blah blahs for a moment.
Yeah.
And here we go around the whole circle of hindrances.
Yeah.
And that we wear ourselves down eventually into a half stupor of worry, pain, neglect. Many people call this depression,
Yeah.
and many in Western Buddhism calls this deep meditation.
Yeah.
And the Buddha would call this state drowsiness, yet one more hindrance. Okay.
Okay.
So we're looking at the fact that, yes, there is that kind of mind that you're waking up to.
Mm.
And there is a question that you have asked that wasn't actually asked out loud. And
Mm.
that was an underlying question: is metta the solution to this problem, or just more of the same problem? That was
Yeah.
basically the question.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. And the easy answer to that is that if it is not, then the solution to the problem, it might very well be more of the problem itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is quite possible. So, um, the first thing that we're going to look at then is that if we're going to get the mind out of this unwholesome state
Mm.
into a wholesome state, then there are ways and procedures to do that. And that if metta was done properly, it would also be one of these things
Yeah.
that can get us out of an unwholesome state into a wholesome state.
Yeah.
Uh, in the 1950s, I think partly because of the end of World War II and a kind of an uplifting kind of celebration, there was a lot of uplifting popular songs.
Yeah.
Uh, and yet, for most people, those songs were maybe uplifting only momentarily, but it wasn't real for them.
Yeah.
Songs like Zippity Doo Dah comes out of 1948 movie Song of the South. Okay. Zippity Doo Dah, zippity yay, my oh my, what a wonderful day. Plenty of sunshine heading my way. Zippity Doo Dah, zippity yay. Then goes on to talk about bluebirds on the shoulders and all kinds of stuff. But the point is that we can sing that kind of song and put our mind into that frame of reference,
Yeah.
or we can sing that song and not believe it.
Yeah.
So if we can put our mind into a frame of reference that is wholesome,
Mm.
so that we're having wholesome thoughts, like this day is actually a good day.
Yeah.
And in that regard, we're saying that metta now is flowing in both directions, but it's got no real object in the sense of sister's dog. It's
Yeah.
just this, the whole day is wonderful. Everything about it is nice.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay, so this is another way of understanding that in many respects, we could say that wholesome thoughts, when they truly are wholesome, are also metta-ish or metta-like.
Yeah.
And so rather than talking about it as a as metta like that, we can better talk about it in the frame of reference that the Buddha actually did. And I will take a moment to say that metta as a practice was
Mm.
practiced by other groups that the Buddha knew about, and that in the Metta Sutta is actually a dialogue or confrontation, not a confrontation at all, sorry. These guys are Metta, by the way, and if these guys are Metta and these guys are Buddha's bhikkhus, it's not going to be any confrontation. But anyway, in this sutta, the Metta dudes said that the first thing is that the mind has to become free from hindrances, and then we can practice metta.
Yeah.
And so the monks bound to that didn't give a response, but came back and told the Buddha what they were meaning. And then the rest of the sutta has to do with that this practice of metta may, in fact, not develop all of the 7 factors of enlightenment.
Mm. Mm.
And the reason for that is that a metta practice that is merely metta, that has that's free from the hindrances, is also not necessarily going to be investigating on guard, nor taking the right effort, and so the likelihood of it is to fail.
Yeah.
But in all cases, it winds up not having all of the 7 factors of enlightenment. And if it did have all 7 factors of enlightenment, then they're doing the Buddhist practice and just calling it metta.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's another way of looking at metta, and that is that we'll look at it from the issue of cause and effect, in the sense that many people in the West hear about a metta practice and they say that, oh, the practice of metta is the cause and the effect is more metta in the world.
Yeah.
Okay. And the answer to that is maybe. It depends again on how it's being practiced.
Yeah.
But that another way of looking at it is to reverse this quality of cause and effect, because in a way, practicing metta, thinking that it's going to lead to more metta in the world, is very much like pushing a string.
Like pushing a string.
Yeah,
Okay.
you take a long string, you lay it out on the table, and then at this end, you start to push it, and you wonder why the other end doesn't go anywhere.
Oh, yeah. Okay, now I get it. Yeah.
But if we turn that around and see the cause effect in another way, then if the mind is in fact clean and pure and bright,
Yeah.
then when he goes out into the world of dealing with others and
Mm.
he maintains that bright, joyful mind, then he will naturally be spreading kindness to others.
Yeah.
If he has learned finally to not be critical of himself, then he will be unlikely to be critical of others.
Yeah.
And that's such a big, big leap right there. That is, in fact, those are the 2 major leaps in the world of coming out of negative views within one's own mind about the world. And then
Mm.
while dealing with the world later, not allow those negative views of the mind to come back in or be regenerated by the things that you see in the world,
Yeah.
so that the mind remains wholesome even when we go out. Now,
Mm.
for monks, we would do that in the sense of go into seclusion for a whole lot of time and then come out occasionally and test it, and then go back into seclusion and then come back out and test it for a while. And when we get really good at it, we could stay out. Okay. But lay people have a different practice in that way. And that is that they need to go into seclusion to get the mind as good as they can, as soon as they can, so that they can go out into the world as soon as they can, because that's the way that we're living our life. In other words, the monk says, I'm going to stay here until I get this stuff straightened out. And the layman is says, I'll do the best I can, but I got to go.
Yeah.
And so that I got to go is a kind of restlessness to go back out into the world. And so this is also something to be noticed, so that when we go back out into the world, we can, in fact, go into the world without that restlessness or any of the other hindrances, so that we
Mm.
can be non-judgmental, we can be non-critical, and we can be nurturing to everyone,
Yeah.
which then works all the way up and down the line for the Brahma Viharas, Metta, Karuna, Mudita, Upekkha.
Yeah.
Then in fact, Upekkha is one of the factors of enlightenment, but if we practice Metta backwards, we'll not get to the level of Upekkha. That in
How do
fact,
you?
the level,
Yeah.
yeah, here is the way that we mean it, is that in fact, Karuna and Mudita are both traps to
Mm.
fall into.
Okay.
And so we go out with the attitude that we're going to spread metta. And then we run across this English language word compassion.
Mm.
Now, actually, compassion back to the Latin means with passion. And the object or the metaphor or the concept that I use is somebody's just fallen overboard. What is compassion? Jumping overboard with them. You got one person who can't swim, okay?
Now you
And
got
so
two.
the other person jumps in too. This is what we would call a pity party.
A pity party.
And misery loves company.
Yeah.
So you throw that guy a life raft out into the waters, and he says, I don't want your life raft. I want you to jump in here too. So then that means that we have to resist that invitation.
Mm.
We have to know that that's going to take us out of our hindrance-free, solid state of mind.
Mm.
But that we can, in fact, act correctly to help the person come out of their pity party,
Yeah.
at least in the moment.
Mm.
If they fall back into it later, they may not fall as hard as if they had been there all along, but instead they came out because you smiled and winked at them and got them to think of something else. Okay. Which is where mudita comes in.
Yeah.
Mudita is called, in English, it's referred to as sympathetic joy.
Mm.
And the mundane way of looking at it would be like the Buddha would say, pleasure I can find anywhere. I can
Mm.
go find pleasure any place. And so, in that regard, if someone else gets something good to happen to them, instead of being jealous, this is a training time to not be jealous. In fact, to be their best friend. The example that I use would be that you and someone else were kind of secretly competing with each other over a job because the boss has gotten promoted and a new boss is going to be appointed. And
Yeah.
you want the job, and so does he, and then he gets the job.
Very common situation.
How are you going to feel when he gets the job?
Yeah.
If you're jealous, it will show. You will be continuing competitive with him, and he's now your boss. That's not going to be a very good situation.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So, in that regard, that means that we have to buck up, get our joy together, congratulate him, and in fact, take him out for supper or even the whole team.
Yeah.
To make a point that you congratulate him that the whole team is going to be better off because he's the boss, and
Mm.
that you'll devote everything you can to giving him team spirit and ask
Yeah.
everybody in the group to do the same. That's the kind of thing that will help the team. But if you remain jealous of him, it's going to hurt the team.
I have a question on that.
Okay.
Can you to take the situation you just were announcing, can you say that the practice fake it till you make it is the way to do it? Because in the beginning, you may be jealous, but you recognize that you are jealous. So in the beginning, you have to fake your joy towards the person.
No, not fake it in that regard. It is, in fact, waking, not faking.
Okay.
It's the waking up to recognize that those thoughts of jealousy are harmful.
Yeah, and then immediately changing
And
them.
then I can change my attitude and say, hey, I'm going to fix this problem.
Yeah. So the recognizing is the really important thing to do.
Exactly. The wakey is the important part.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wakey.
Including sometimes when we are faking it, we need to wake up to that too when we are faking it.
Yeah.
But this is in fact a lot to do with gladdening the mind, because people have told me many times that, yeah, I practiced your gladdening the mind stuff, but I still don't feel glad, and it's all your fault.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't feel it. I say it, but I don't feel it.
Yeah. Yeah. So
And
to have a practical aspect of that, if you recognize the jealousy in your mind, do you then gladden your mind and say, okay, there's jealous in my mind, and you put
that's
a smiling
dangerous.
of your mind and you change it by that.
I caught that jealousy.
Yeah.
I might have broken my leg tripping over that jealousy. I'm glad I'm glad I saw it. Wow, I'm glad I saw that. Because I've been that way with jealousy myself years ago. Wow, I've been competing with that guy and making us both miserable.
Yeah.
Let me lay off.
Yeah.
I'm causing trouble here by my jealousy.
Yeah. Oh, I have another question to that. Let's say you weren't able to recognize the jealousy and you were jealous for an hour, and sometimes this feels like running and you can't lie down if you are running. So how to stop a very jealous mind if you are very jealous because you didn't recognize it? Do you have to practice it the same way, like catching it?
Actually, you are right. Those jealous thoughts may pop right back in a moment later or the next day or whatever. But when we see that jealousy and see it with that, let us say, ferocious intensity of insight, when you see that jealousy, that's what then puts us on guard. Hey, wait a minute, it's not over yet. It's going to keep coming back. And every time it does, I'm going to grab it by the throat and throw it out of the mind.
Yeah.
I'm going to catch that jealousy. Why? Because I want to deal with people with mudita.
Yeah.
To be the happiest guy there. And I cannot be happy if I'm jealous of someone.
Yeah, definitely.
And this is very hard to see that, in fact, within one context within the suttas, jealousy is part of mana. And mana is the Pali word that is talked about often with the word conceit. But another way of looking at it is competitiveness, our competitive nature. Why? Because at one time in life, and in fact, occasionally from time to time, who gets the early bird gets the worm, or someone gets it and somebody else doesn't.
Yeah.
Right. So there's physical realities that happen around the feeling of jealousy. He got the job and I didn't. Okay.
Yeah.
But this is, in fact, not life endangering. But acting jealous is life endangering.
Yeah.
And so we begin to see where the danger really lies. That the danger is not, oh, I had to do without, I didn't get what I wanted.
Yeah.
Okay, so we think originally, or the lower part of the mind will think, oh, I didn't get what I want. Danger, danger, danger.
Yeah.
Rather than, oh, wait a minute, how I respond to not getting what I want.
Yeah.
Okay. And so basically what we're saying in this regard is that not getting what I want, the job, is just piling on with now jealousy.
Yeah.
But if we are able to catch that stuff
Mm.
and are on guard for the jealousy, and the best way of knowing to be on guard with jealousy is by catching yourself, breaking your leg with your own jealousy,
Yeah.
actually doing some damage with it and getting caught red-handed at it. That's
Yeah.
the best way. I mean, boy, that's like what they call post-traumatic stress order.
Yeah.
Is when you figure out, hey, man, I'm not going to do that anymore. And
Yeah.
so, in that regard, some insights could be very strong and very profound in the sense that somebody can spend years and years and years and years being jealous this, jealous that, and all kinds of jealousy. And then something big happens and he wakes up, and
Mm.
now for all intents and purposes, from the outside world at least, he's not jealous because every jealous thought he has, he nips that in the bud because that's not where I want to go now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But most of the time, we don't get an opportunity of a great big insight. Most of us are able to learn with smaller insights.
Mm.
That if I had been able to learn about jealousy easily, I could have gotten over it years earlier and not looked like such a dick to myself. Okay, so getting back to the quality of metta, this is exactly what we're talking about.
Mm.
Is that you're jealous of someone or having any other kind of relationship with that person inside your own mind, then when
Yeah.
you actually are with them, you cannot practice the metta that you would have liked to have practiced because you've got jealous thoughts, especially
Yeah.
when they come in front of you and exhibit their competitive behavior, and that jealousy just comes right up.
Yeah.
So, um, being ready for the outside world, or when we recognize that we've gotten ourselves jealous, especially when we're right in front of him, that's the time to wakey wakey.
Yeah.
Now, as you were talking about faking it, no, if you actually wake up to see what a disaster that is,
Yeah.
then we can resolve.
Mm.
Or another way of talking about it is to renounce that
Mm.
behavior. Now, when I'm using the word renounce here, I'm using it in this more correct or noble form. But in most cases, we use the word renounce or to renounce something because intellectually we can see that it's bad. A whole
Yeah.
bunch of other people see that it's bad. And
Mm.
many people take religious vows that it is bad and I renounce it.
Mm.
But that's kind of renunciation that's real, that's based upon deep insight.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's when the renunciation gets really, really strong, is actually because of the determination that I'm going to clean up my act. That's dukkha.
Mm.
And I'm not going to go there.
Yeah.
All right. So that's a kind of a way that we are practicing more correctly rather than being stuck with a long metta practice. And then when we get in front of the guy, here's all this jealousy. And we find out that all of that metta practice was fake.
Yeah.
And it was not as alert as actually looking at these hindrances down to their source.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm.
Now there's another thing that we can look at too, and that is that a lot of people in the West, and I think they have this attitude of metta is way out there someplace, comes
Mm.
from the phrase of may all beings be happy.
Mm.
And then even the instruction is to start in the middle and then go to outer layers and go further and further out with it.
Yeah.
Okay. But this actually uh, does not work
Mm.
because of something, and that is that there is your own particular known world, and that world is the world of your senses plus your storage systems. Okay. Like you've heard me say before, everyone is an emperor of their own pile of dirt. And the question is, are you going to be buried under it, or are you going to be sitting on top of your world?
Yeah, I've heard that one. Yeah.
Okay. So sitting on top of your own world actually means that you are now not in your own dirt,
Yeah.
and that you're an emperor only in the sense that you're an emperor as far as you can see from your own pile of dirt,
Yeah.
because there's all these other emperors out there also.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is an important quality, that our world is in fact in reality, much smaller.
Yeah.
We can say that our world is opened up because of the internet, but basically, even though the internet comes by a wire from way out there, all I really see is this laptop.
Yeah.
And so long as I keep remembering that the reality is that this is the laptop.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is not really the president or the vice president or this criminal or that criminal or whatever like that. It's just a laptop.
Yeah.
That's staying in the real world.
Yeah. So can you
Okay.
say that it is practicing mind looking at mind? Is that the analogy of what you are doing, or is it the wrong expression of that?
Actually, it's mind. When you say mind looking at mind, you're actually talking about two different uses of the word mind.
Mm.
And we don't quite make that distinction. So we need to make the distinction of the mind looking at the mind. I think that we've talked about this some. It has to do with evolutionary biology.
Mm.
That we started off with a reptilian brain.
Mm.
Then, about 200 million years ago, they developed the mid cortex, the temporal lobe, which gives us our societies, our language, and all of that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
then the part of the brain that the monkeys don't have, that was developed, let us say, within the last 600,000 years. And they think that that was mainly developed because we were eating cooked food. So we had to find fire with a monkey mind. And then we developed this frontal cortex.
Yeah.
And it is this frontal cortex that gives us this kind of consciousness to see what the other parts of the mind are doing. For instance,
Okay.
when you're talking to yourself, you know you're talking to yourself,
Yeah.
and that you know that what you're talking to is kind of a more primitive part, that in fact in the reptilian brain
Yeah.
is referred to by Eric Berne as the child ego state. And this is what Freud called the id.
Yeah.
Okay. And so there's this natural feeling part of us. Then the language that it uses is the language of feelings, and it feels danger, and
Mm.
it feels fear and anger and loss and all of those feelings. But this also is the source of feelings of elation and security and comfort and ease and satisfaction.
Yeah.
Right. But if the dialogue from the mid cortex is all
Mm.
about rules to follow and things you ought to do, and get up off your behind and go cut the yard, and after you cut the yard, trim the hedge, and when you trim the hedge, go to college and get a degree, you know, all of that kind of stuff is just one job after another, and all of those marching orders are given out of the uh, what the Buddha called um, uh, um, Kaya Vedana Sankara. In other words, all the stored up voice, vocal stuff,
Mm.
and that it has an effect upon the Vedana,
Yeah. The feelings.
the feelings. Okay,
Yeah.
so the voice and the feelings are in a dialogue. And if you listen, you can hear that stuff in your own mind. An
Yeah.
example of that is you ought to have metta for that pooch. He does
Yeah.
belong to your sister, you know.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And then there's a part of you saying, I don't want to have metta for that dog.
Yeah.
Yeah, huh? All right. So look at that dialogue going on there.
Yeah.
And that's the point that we have to begin to look at is that there's a dialogue between the parent and the child. And
Mm.
normally, what happens from the parents is critical thinking.
Mm.
The kind of critical thinking that is so popular and so common in our society that actually builds cities and in some cases builds character, but normally what it does is crushes people into child ego state, and then they live their lives under the hobnail boot of authority.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we feel oppressed and we don't like it and we want to rebel.
Yeah.
And some societies have more rebellion built into them than others.
Yeah.
Gypsies, for instance, have a very, very strong rebellious streak.
Yeah.
And
What is
that's why
gypsy? I don't know that.
Gypsy, Romanian, there is a group of Eastern Europeans who were unwanted wherever they went, and not all of them were
Yeah.
Jewish.
Yeah. Okay.
And
Yeah.
so they're
Now I know.
known to have very colorful clothing, to always carry a knife. They wrap bandanas around their head,
Yeah.
and all of their wagons have very heavy wheels.
Yeah. Okay.
I
Now
mean,
I
that's
know.
what you see, and they're Romanovs or Romanian, and they're called gypsies.
Okay. Now I know. Okay.
Okay. And you
Yeah.
know that they are known to be thieves and
Yeah.
rebel rousers, okay, and
Yeah.
troublemakers. Well, if your whole community was always constantly ostracized and you were never wanted wherever you went, you would always resent whatever locals that were there that didn't want you there. And
Yeah.
so it's a sort of a combination made in heaven
Yeah.
that the whole societies wind up behaving that way. But each one of us has that rebellion built in because we
Mm.
rebelled from our parents.
Yeah.
Okay. In fact, it's quite traditional for the young man to finally rebel against his dad and move out of the house, join the army, go to a different college, have a big
Yeah.
row,
Yeah.
and maybe go for years before they see each other again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So this is kind of built in this
Mm.
whole thing. So we have to actually begin to look at how we relate to the various people that are in our lives.
Yeah.
And this is where the six points of the compass come from.
Mm.
This is where that teaching is coming from. Is that we need to have metta in wise ways
Mm.
towards all directions as far as our directional systems reach.
Yeah.
And yet, in Western metta practice, it's taught, may all beings be happy, where in fact, that's just magical thinking.
Yeah. This is exactly the question I was having. Yeah.
To where, if you are having metta for all of the beings that you ever come in contact with, then
Yeah.
that's the world.
Okay. So this is the difference.
This
Okay.
is the difference. Okay, so there is also the possibility of connectivity. I have
Mm.
heard, and there's some mathematics to prove this, that even though there are 7 billion people on the planet, each person knows enough people so that the guy who knows this guy, who knows that guy, or who knows that guy, by 6 generations down, we will have reached the entire population. Now,
Yeah.
that's
I've
not
heard of that one.
because of But here's one that's really interesting, and that is I knew Bhikkhu Buddhadasa, and Bhikkhu Buddhadasa knew the king of Thailand, only one step removed. However, the king of Thailand, ere how much I have in mental stuff
Yeah.
about that one step removed, is all
Yeah.
conceptualization. I never actually spoke with him. I've been within 10 feet of him, but there were thousands of people who were in 10 feet of him at that moment.
Yeah.
And they were all focused on him. And who was he focused on? Probably anybody but a fat monk standing there. Or how Western he appeared or not. So, in that regard, the king is not in my world.
Yeah.
So we have to look at it from the perspective of what really is the world. And so now we go back to the world is actually defined by limits. And those
Yeah.
limits are sensory limits.
Yeah.
If I have not talked and spoken he back to me, then there is no relationship there.
Yeah. Definitely.
Okay. So, in that way, there's no reason for me to want to have metta for people that I have never met when I can't even deal with the people that I have.
Yeah.
Guaranteed, many of the people that I haven't met are worse than all the people that I know now. And if I can't handle the people that I know now, how am I going to handle the really rough customers that
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go through these 6 stations.
Yeah.
The people who are in front of me are the people who I deal with on a regular basis. This, in some contexts, would be like businesses. If you're a businessman, then you deal with business people.
Yeah.
On one side of you, standing with you, is your friends on one side and your family on the other. And
Yeah.
who
Okay.
is behind you are the people who are trying to stab you in the back.
Yeah.
And the people above you are the ones who are you in your own mind superior to you in some way. And the kind of people that would fit into that classification would be doctors, lawyers, cops, teachers, gurus, presidents, politicians, bosses, factory owners, rich people, that kind of thing.
Can it be the Buddha, or would it be the same situation? Yeah.
So, well, okay, you could put him up there if you want to.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. And then the people below us are the ones who help us. If you are a businessman, then your employees.
Yeah.
Or it would be the service workers, for instance, the waitress.
Yeah.
Or in some cases, a nurse. And in other
Yeah.
cases, the nurse is the boss. And in very, very rare cases, they're there to stab you with something.
Okay.
But in any
So,
of the cases, it's going to be a nurse that walks into the room that you're in, not some abstract nurse that was in a movie or something.
yeah.
Okay. Which means that in this regard, we stop making generalities about people and start looking at each individual person that we have in front of us.
Yeah.
That if you're capable of studying and understanding your own mind, then you can begin to study and understand their behavior.
Yeah.
And so
So,
waking up and become observant. There's other issues around that. One of them was one student um, talked about getting nervous when his boss came around.
yeah.
So I said, well, when your boss comes around, you almost always know 5 or 10 seconds ahead of time. You can see him rumbling down the hall.
Yeah.
What are you going to do with that 5 seconds? Are you going to get yourself terrified?
Yeah.
Are you going to get yourself ready for meeting a good friend?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so the time for wakey is as soon as you recognize it is coming, not after you've already gotten yourself stuck in your old crap. But
Yeah.
watch, okay, and be on guard. So this is actually um, an introduction to what we call a not to-do list.
Yeah.
And for this guy, the top item on the list is don't freak out when the boss comes by.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wakey. Get
Yeah.
your metta up. Okay. Take a deep
Yeah.
breath and recognize I can handle this. This guy's my friend. There's no problem here.
Yeah.
If you expect to get chewed out, you will be.
Yeah. So,
Or you'll feel like it, whether the guy actually thinks he's doing it or not.
yeah.
So we, in that way, create our own reality.
Yeah.
So this is how we begin to operate with metta is that the practice of it is getting our own mind cleaned out, to get the unwholesome thoughts out of the mind, to get ourselves to the point of having one wholesome thought after another, and some of those thoughts may be the thoughts of metta. That's okay,
Yeah.
no problem there. I'm not here to distinguish metta from wholesome thoughts.
Yeah.
But sometimes, if there's longing or other things, or we're doing it because we're supposed to, or I've heard it was a good practice, but I don't really feel like it, but I'll do it anyway. That's not wholesome. And you can
Yeah.
see that it's not wholesome. That we begin to recognize that we've got a choice here. And that choice is basically the choice of our attitude. We can either sit here and get really good benefit out of this, or
Yeah.
we can sit there and complain about the fact that we're not getting any benefit out of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's our choice. So
Yeah.
once we change that choice to, I'm going to get really good benefit out of this, and I'm going to catch those thoughts of jealousy or whatnot, um, and throw those out of the mind, then when I meet the people, I can maintain that because I've already started to build up a habit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, and then you can go back and repractice it and think over it again and have sort of a debriefing session with yourself. How did I do with the boss just now?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was all right.
So investigate it.
And so investigate and
Yeah.
do so in retrospect a little bit, but only in the sense of gaining some value out of it,
Yeah. So
rather
I have
than
a
a new
yeah.
problem to solve.
Yeah. So to sum up a little bit of what you just said, so is it so the right practice is to take what the Buddha said metaphorically, as he says above, below, it is metaphorically mean. I got that. So is it wrong practice to sit and practice metta like this? For example, now I'm sitting on a chair and I have neighbors in front of me, which are part of reality. So
Mm-hmm.
obviously, it is not meant to practice metta towards the first quarter, let's say, to the front by practicing metta towards my neighbors who are in front of me. It is meant metaphorically to, like you just said, the people I'm dealing with in everyday life. So
Mm-hmm.
would you say it is still wrong practice to sit here and practice metta to my neighbors who are in the front, neighbors who are in the back right now? Or is that also a practice you can do?
Yes,
Also a
like I
weight
said,
practice.
that would. So you're asking me about, is that a wholesome metta practice? And the answer to that is sure.
So you can do it. And you can also expand it towards the town you are living. Is also right practice because it is part of reality.
That's getting a little magical, though. It depends upon what the limits are,
Okay.
and there's no reason to uh, do. There's something else going on,
Mm.
and that is that are you? What is the purpose of doing that? Bringing
Yeah.
to mind someone that you haven't seen in 3 or 4 years and saying, may you also feel good, or may you
Yeah.
be well and happy. The question then is, how do you feel when you say that?
It is a wholesome state, I would say. I feel wholesome.
Okay, that's the point. Is this practice of talking about and thinking about those who are around you and
Mm.
giving them good vibes, does that give you really good vibes? In other words, if you're transmitting love, you've got to have a transmitter.
Yeah.
Okay, this is the whole point. Is that how uh, joyous then is
Mm.
this making you? This can, in fact, build you up. There have been many stories, and for some reason or another, it happens generally to old ladies who come
Yeah.
into the Vipassana retreat and they're not very good at it, but they shine in those metta practices because I guess, help with mentality or whatever, and they just glow. They just feel so good when they're practicing metta. Okay,
Yeah.
not very many, but a few do. Younger people, not so much. So,
Mm.
um, practicing metta in a way that gives you great benefit
Yeah.
is the way of looking at it, because you can have that same feeling that the old ladies have, just glowing with and radiating with metta.
Yeah. Do you have to practice metta at all towards persons, or
No,
can you
you could
just
glow and
practice metta?
radiate joy. You could glow and radiate wisdom.
Yeah. Just radiate it without directing it towards persons. That is also
You know,
correct
right.
practice.
That's another way of thinking about it. Is there you are just glowing embers. When the
Yeah.
embers are glowing, what direction are they glowing into?
Yeah,
All
all
directions.
directions. Yeah. So I think now you just answered my question. I get the point that you have to distinguish between real matter and the magical matter, which is wrong practice. But you just answered my questions by it is right practice to just radiate it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this is exactly what I was asking you, and I
Yeah,
now feel
just like
that
you would radiate joy and radiating metta, and just being happy when
yeah.
you're meeting people.
Okay. Thank you, Bante. Yeah. Okay, thank. I have another question. We were talking at the beginning of our talk, we were talking about these remnants of what you've been experienced in your mind.
Hmm.
And I have a question on the second tetrad of the Anapanasati, which relates to that. And Bhikkhu Bodhi translates it as he trains thus, I shall breathe in and out, experiencing mental formations. So by mental formations, are those these remnants of what you've been experienced, or is it wrong? Or do I get that point wrong?
It depends upon how the verb is better translated. Is it translated as watching mental formating
Yeah.
or mental formations? Because if we're looking at mental formations, we're looking at past structures.
Yeah. What
And
is meant by
if we're
structure? Yeah.
looking, yeah, okay, past events are just memories that are coming up, as opposed to putting things together,
Yeah.
making decisions, the process of trying to figure things out.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, in that regard, also, there's something else there. You're talking actually about step number 7
Yeah.
of Anapanasati. And step
Yeah.
number 8 then has a whole lot to do with the fact that these mental formations at a certain point, um, we have to understand that this is the boundaries or the limits between
Mm.
the higher mind
Yeah.
and the reptilian mind. That in fact, when the Buddha is specifically talking about the higher mind, he will use the word mana and manu, which gives us the word man and human and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And when he is using the more primitive part of the brain and the mind, which also includes feelings, is chitta or sita.
Yeah.
Okay. So when Westerners talk about heart and mind,
Uh-huh.
they're pointing in that direction that there is an intellectual mind and then there's a gut feeling. And basically what Christianity teaches is to follow your heart. You'll find that from Walt Disney and many, many other places. And
Yeah.
that's exactly opposite of what the Buddha teaches, which is looking at what you're doing. Wake up, bring that higher mind in there, start to
Yeah.
control these emotions and these sensations and these feelings, and start feeling the way that you want to, because you've got the kind of mind that can feel the way that you want to.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So this is basically one of the aspects that the Buddha Dhamma turns everything upside down.
Yeah.
Because what we're saying is in fact, this is why it is called Sita Nupassana, is that it's this area of the mind that is strongly connected with feelings and thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
But there is more to the mind than that, and that is the one who is watching all of these feelings and all of these thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, we talk about that observer. That observer is actually part of the brain that dogs don't have. They're not that
Yeah.
kind of aware.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that's what gives us our society, but that's what makes humans miserable.
Yeah.
And the reason for it is that actually what makes people miserable is the fact that there is this dialogue between the verbal and the feeling, which is
Yeah.
that area of the mind that is Sita, that is that area that actually can be modified or changed. But the question is, when we're investigating the mind to see what's in it, what is it that's doing the investigation?
Yeah.
The answer to that is that's the frontal cortex.
Yeah.
And what we were trying to do here is make the frontal cortex the boss.
Yeah.
Wake it up and start leaving all of the turmoil of the mind between the parent and the child, and bring the adult into it, and
Yeah.
waking up and
Yeah.
recognizing that many of our thoughts are critical thoughts, leaving us feeling bad, when in fact we could have nurturing thoughts that leave us feeling good. And we'll be
Yeah.
far more productive that way.
Yeah.
It's almost like people keep throwing sand in their engine because they like the sound of it.
Yeah.
And when they stop throwing sand in their engine, it runs better.
Yeah.
Okay, so, but we have to make that kind of choice to
Mm.
stop throwing sand in our own gearworks. And
Yeah.
what is sand? The unwholesome thoughts, the
Yeah.
thoughts of the critical mind. Oh, this is not good enough. Oh, that's not good enough.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel metta, but it's not good enough metta. I want more metta than this.
Yeah. So,
I feel
um,
satisfied, but it's not big satisfaction. It's a little satisfaction, and this satisfaction is not really satisfying at all now, is it?
yeah.
And so instead of practicing what we really would call satisfaction, what they're actually practicing is an intentionally fake satisfaction.
Yeah.
And when we can recognize that we're doing that,
Mm-hmm.
we can stop it and start actually gladdening the mind
Yeah.
by nurturing the mind,
Yeah.
rather than every step that we make forward, we nah, 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 that wasn't good enough, which is coming out of that critical mind.
Yeah.
And when we see that critical mind doing that, we can say, wait a minute, stop.
Yeah.
We need nurturing from that critical mind, not more criticism.
Yeah.
And so when we learn to control that, then when we get out in the world, we can continue to control it so that we can continue to give people metta rather than the sand that we've been normally throwing in our own gears.
Yeah. So to get back to my question, can you give a practical advice on how to practice breathing in and out, experiencing mental formations? Is it that, let's say you,
Okay, back to that. All right.
if that is okay with you?
Yes. Reflecting upon the decision-making qualities. It has a lot to do with understanding Paticca Samuppada in the sense that we take in sensory input and then we process it. And that we process it, and that processing is making a mental formation, a new one in this moment.
And the sensual input can be a thought, let's say a thought on work or a thought on my sister's dog. This is what you mean by sensual input. And then the processing of it.
Here's an example of that. We hear the door open, and we know the person's coming in, and they verify it immediately that they are who you thought they were. Now the next thought is perhaps, where have you been? I have been waiting on you. Or the other possible thought would be, I am so glad to see you. Now, both of them can have positive impact, but one of them is much more prone to speak of exasperation. Where have you been? I have been waiting on you. As opposed to, I am so glad that you're here now. Okay. Which one of those are we going to choose? We've got that choice, and we have to do it at that point in time when the door opens and we know who it is. So we have to be kind of ready for that. But if you're expecting someone to come, then you can plan in advance. When they come, I'm going to tell them how happy I am to see them. So that's another one that we can put on that don't do list. When the boss comes up, don't freak out. Here is when anybody comes up, don't express unhappiness. Always express joy. I'm glad to see you.
And how to handle this example you were just saying with someone opening the door instead of opening the door, a thought that comes up? How do you handle that one?
Well, that's the whole point, is to start recognizing what kind of mental formations we have when things happen, like someone comes through the door, something new happens. What formations do you make with that point?
So, like,
how are you handling the situation? What formations that you have? And the other point, number 8, then, is now what is called the mental conditioners. Is not old feelings, they're new feelings. In other words, thoughts immediately condition the mind, and the mind immediately conditions. So thoughts and feelings are interrelated, and they are connected together in this sutta. That in fact, in one sutta that I know of in the Thai language, because I had my friend Robert look this up as a point, and in that particular sutta, sita in the Thai language is translated as the Thai word jai, which actually means heart.
Okay.
And that in Thai language, we have a lot of words for jai. Jai yin is cool heart. Jai ron is hot heart. Jai dang and Jai dam are black heart and red heart. Jai yin, those are many, many words, all about the feelings. Okay, but there are actual ordinary words like cool, but then they're applied to the heart, and that means that it's a feeling. So all of the feeling words have the word jai in them, and then the Pali is translated into the Thai by people who know what they're talking about. The word sita is translated as heart.
Okay.
Okay. And this is an important quality because it's this heart. And in this regard, we're talking about the sita then would be the parent and the child in dialogue together. As opposed to the higher mind, the witness, or the one who could be, if he was paying attention, watch what's going on. And so this is what sati is all about, is to come into the present moment, which means to basically to wake up this frontal cortex. And that's part of the
Mm.
reason why we want to involve the breathing with it, is to give the body enough oxygen so that we can be really awake and
Yeah.
alert, so that we can watch what's going on closely. And what's going on is this point 7. What's happening in there?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. What are the sankaras, or what are the formations that are formating right now? What's all the
Yeah.
buzz? What's the stir? That's
Yeah.
as I breathe in long, I watch this mental stirring. And as I
Yeah.
breathe out long, I watch this mental stirring.
Yeah.
But we can only do that from a state of stability.
Mm.
That is that first jhana that has already the sukha and the piti built into it.
Yeah.
In other words, we can, an example I really like to use is a stable camera.
Yeah.
That the slower the film or the speed, the more stable the camera needs to be to keep things in focus.
Yeah.
So that the aperture, okay? And so that means that if we can slow our own mind body process down,
Mm.
then we can really see what's going on.
Yeah.
It's almost like being very close to the railroad tracks. So when the train comes by, the letters on the side of the train go by so fast we can't see them.
Yeah.
You can't read, even though the letters may be 4 to 6 feet high, because we're so close to the train. When we draw
Yeah.
back the train 50 to 60 feet, now we can read all the letters on the side of the train as it passes by.
Yeah.
We need to get some distance, but that distance also is part of the perspective of this drawing back from the formations or the formating. We can say that, in fact, we're doing a whole lot of formations when we're really close to what's going on. In this case, the analogy of the train with all those letters passing by. And what we
Yeah.
do is draw back
Yeah.
in the mind. Or
Yeah.
in the reality of it is that we're spending more mind moments in the frontal cortex, so that we
Yeah.
can now watch what the child and parent dialogue is all about.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
So
sometimes it's really, really striking.
yeah, definitely. Yeah.
One of the times it seems really striking, but the student doesn't see it, is watching YouTube and saying, you ought to go meditate. And then having the thought, I don't want to meditate, I want to watch the video. But
Yeah.
you ought to go meditate. No, you want to watch the video, don't you? And
Yeah.
now we're not watching the video, and
Yeah.
we're not meditating. We're in this
Yeah.
stupid dialogue that that we get caught in. And where's the adult to wake up to say, look at this stuff?
Yeah.
Another way of doing it would be to wake up right then and there and say, yeah, it really does feel good to watch videos while breathing in and breathing out.
Yeah. Okay. So now to give another example, or maybe you can say if I got it right. Let's say I'm meditating and I'm thinking of my sister's dog. So that would be the sensual input. And wrong practice would be like getting absorbed into it, like imagining to throw the ball or to cuddle with him, whatever. So that would be wrong practice. Experiencing mental formations would be, okay, there is the sensual input of my sister's dog as a thought, and then to experience it. This is the right
Mhm.
practice. Did I get that right?
Yes, but in both cases, if there is joy, it would be correct practice. But if you have the thought, where is that dog?
Yeah.
Okay, now that's an unwholesome thought. Or,
Okay.
uh, I bet that dog needs a bath. That would be
Yeah.
another unwholesome thought.
Okay.
Lucky's so funny. She's here now. We started to talk
Okay.
about dogs. She's right here.
She heard me.
Yeah.
So
So,
how do you tranquilize it? The eighth step. How do you tranquilize those mental formations?
okay. Um, by catching them And with the dog, it would be in the sense of, because I've used this in other examples, down boy.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Just don't have to think about that. Everything, going back to that little mantra that I use so often with the students, everything's okay.
Yeah.
Everything's fine. When I see the dog, we'll be happy together. But right now, everything is fine. No dog.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, well,
When I
well,
see the
Bante.
dog, everything's going to be all right.
Yeah.
So
Well,
this
Bante,
is the way to think
yeah.
about it. Okay. So um, that would be the calming of the mental formations, which is exactly then back to the gladdening of the mind. And it's exactly, I hadn't put this together before, but this is exactly one's right effort of
Mm.
removing unwholesome, noisy thoughts into calm, happy, collected, wholesome thoughts is exactly that calming the mental formations,
Yeah.
of calming that parent ego state down from being so critical all the time, and
Yeah.
start to having nurturing thoughts instead.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a new perspective. Thanks for pointing that out.
Yeah. It's funny that we are talking about this because I've read some dissertations of universities where they made MRI scans of meditators from the
Uh-huh.
prefrontal cortex, and experienced meditators, they could investigate that the activity of prefrontal cortex was going down. So maybe this relates to calming the mental formations. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
just yeah.
Well, the actual job of um, the frontal cortex would
Mm.
not to get agitated and involved with all of the verbal and emotional dialogue that's going
Yeah,
on, but rather to calm things down. Everything's okay. Everything's fine. Is a
yeah.
whole lot different than the frontal cortex joining in the chorus with the parent. Fire, fire. You know, but rather everything's okay, everything's fine. And so, in fact, yes, you would have everything calmed down, but the part that's doing the calming is the frontal cortex,
Yeah,
and it will also calm down, and that means that it's getting more and more fit for work.
yeah,
As it's calming down, that means it's becoming more and more alert, sharper, and able to see that formatting happening.
yeah, yeah. Sometimes it feels like the not the natural state of the mind, but a common state of the mind is like this sensual input, and you are part of the machine, like
Hmm.
processing this sensual input. But the real practice would be the machine man who sees the machine working and calms
Precisely.
down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That in fact, one of the analogies that I use with
Mm.
the teachings of the Buddha in general is, imagine that you had kind of a young man, a teenager, kind of a wild guy, and that everybody in the entire village knows about that clock. It's come out of antique history, but it
Hmm.
never has worked.
Yeah.
And they don't want the kids playing with it because the kids may mess it up. But this guy sneaks in and he finds out what the problem is. And by putting a particular gear back in slot where it belongs, now it'll turn correctly. And now the clock starts working, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, the first year, everybody's congratulating him for fixing the clock. But 10 years later, they give him the clock itself. In other words, he invented the whole clock.
Uh-huh.
And 100 years later, let's make this clock a religious item. Okay. And this
Okay.
is what happens, all right, is just something
Uh-huh.
little happens like that. And that's what the Buddha did. He found that the trick is that we have to change the mind from unwholesome thoughts to wholesome thoughts and start investigating that so that we get very good at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the whole meat of the practice right there. And there's in so many different suttas And yet, for some reason in Western Buddhism, that one key point hasn't gotten put into practice here in the West.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is that we do have control over what our thoughts are going to be. And the reason that we have control over the thoughts that we have is because we do have that frontal cortex that can be alerted, woke up,
Yeah.
so that it can pay attention to what's going on. And when it does, we can see the unwholesomeness of those thoughts that we're having and make a correction to that parent ego state. That'll, hey, a lot of the stuff that I stored in there over the years is a bunch of junk. And the way that I felt about all of that stuff was a bunch of junk too.
Yeah.
So let's clean house and let's throw out unwholesome critical thoughts, put in nurturing thoughts, and let's throw out all of the unwholesome feelings of sadness, anger, frustration, grief, despair, and put in some new feelings, contentment and satisfaction and joy and satisfaction and success, and
Yeah.
and a feeling of, wow, isn't this nice?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the whole teachings of the Buddha, but we have to practice that over and over and over again because the old habits are in such a profound locking in, almost like ruts in a road,
Mm.
that a really, really unskilled driver, when he's going down the roads, the road itself will keep the driver stuck in the ruts. But a very, very seasoned driver will drive down that road, but not ever have put a wheel in the rut.
Yeah.
But by doing so, he's going like this. The guy who keeps getting stuck in the rut is the one who keeps going down the road. So this is a way of looking at it, is we have to really pay attention because there's a road, there's a rut ahead. The boss is coming up. That's a rut. 5 seconds ahead. Be careful.
Yeah.
Be alert.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you, Bante. You gave many practical, or I drew out many practical advices out of our talk. And maybe, I think the talk would be too long, but maybe the next time we can talk about the other tetrads of Anapanasati. I'm interested in like experiencing mind, gladdening mind.
I
I
like
would
your
really,
questions. You're asking all the right questions.
yeah, maybe I think it would be too long if we would start this question right now, or
Yeah,
what do you think?
let's do it later then. Okay, we got
Yeah.
another time.
So I have just another very very short question,
Okay.
and this is if I practice sati during the day or during meditation, I find it distracting to change the labeling. Like, let's say I'm aware of walking, and then I'm aware of lying down. Then I say in my head, walking, or lying down.
But there's a
And
whole lot more to walking than just walking. That's
yeah,
almost like, in a way, it's like coming up to a door,
yeah,
opening the door, and then talking about the things you can see from outside the room. And in this
yeah,
case, just walking and walking. What you need to do is to go a little deeper into it, in the
yeah,
sense of, notice how the arms are moving.
yeah,
Notice what breeze is in the air. Get fully in touch with the body and go all over the place. But then
yeah,
you can also watch the mental formations that you have while you're
yeah.
doing that. That all of that stuff is available to you. So just walking, that's just a beginner's way to get
Ah,
started.
okay. Yeah. So
Okay.
that's
That there's,
okay.
in
Yeah.
fact, all kinds of things to notice, but we
Mm.
also don't want to do a lot of strong noting,
Yeah.
but rather noticing.
Yeah.
That, in fact, the word itself, noting, is problematic because we think of sticky notes and
Yeah.
writing things down and taking
Yeah.
notes.
Yeah.
Okay. Taking
Yeah.
notes, taking names, kicking ass, that kind of stuff. All right. No, we're looking at it in a much deeper sense, in the sense of really just to be here now and to be open to whatever's
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah.
that oftentimes the strong noting slows us down. That by the
Yeah.
time we get the walking word out, we miss 10 things that were happening.
Yeah. Yes. So, yeah. So my question to that is that instead of saying walking, and so in my mind, say sati and I arouse sati on what is going on. So I make the word sati as my basis. So the question is if you would say that if that is right practice to have the word sati as the basis and then to
Yes.
direct the mind on
And you can
sati
play
of
with that.
walking. Yes,
You can
sati
play
on.
with that in the sense of what's happening.
Yeah.
What's happening? What's this? What's this?
Yeah, this is exactly my
This is it.
question. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. You can, in fact, you can use the Pali word tatatha. This is it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Just what's happening. That's what we're looking at is to be
Yeah.
in the present moment without spending a lot of time noting, because noting itself slows us down in that regard.
Yeah. And it also feels like if I have the word sati as the basis and it goes on most of the time during the day, then it sometimes feels like a volume button, then that you are distracted by anything and the sati goes down, but then you remember sati, like you say, to open up and then the volume button goes up. So it
Yes,
feels right.
exactly like that. It's it's like a noise canceling microphone that I've seen, that I can hear the background of the person, and sometimes there's a lot of noise
Yeah.
until they speak. And when they speak, then now the mic had readjusted, and now it's at microphone or human voice level, and all that background noise just goes
Yeah.
down. So
Yeah.
that's another way of thinking that when sati comes, when we actually are looking, that all the background noise goes down. That's
Yeah.
another way of looking at that from the perspective that you were talking about, which is the formations. All of that noise is just a bunch of formations formulating and forming things in the mind, which in
Yeah.
fact has to happen a lot in order to do that hard noting. There's a
Yeah.
lot of formulating and formations have to occur.
Yeah.
When you're noting at a very soft, easy but fast way, not a lot of formations are happening now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the less formatting we do, the more in the here now we are.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Okay. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
So I hope that answers that question for you.
Yeah, definitely. I didn't want to say the word mantra when saying sati, but it's kind of a mantra.
It
It's just
can
an
be.
opening up.
Right. And it can be, especially if it's real
Mm.
in this moment.
Yeah.
Okay. And in this, everything's okay. Everything's fine.
Yeah.
Wow. What a wonderful moment this is. Those are
Yeah.
all mantras.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So it's right to say that. Okay.
Udo is a mantra.
Yeah.
In breath, out breath. Sati is a good mantra.
Yeah. This
Wakey,
was very,
wakey. That's an
yeah.
excellent mantra.
So Bante, thank you for this great talk, and maybe we can talk about the other tetrads of
Okay.
Anapanasati the next time.
Yes. Let's
Yeah.
continue.
Okay. Is it okay
Okay.
for you again on the weekend? Like,
Yes, sure. No problem.
okay. Thank you so much, Bante.
Okay. Bye bye.
Bye bye.